Good to have you on the show. This is Larry by Omobola Stephen. I'm the host of Omobola Stephen. Now on the podcast, Larry by Omobola Stephen, all we do is that we explore personal development and self-improvement topics, occasioning professionals who have just the right information, insight that are constructive yet disruptive in nature, pivoting the positive changes and transformation that you and I need in these ever dynamic times that we are in. In this season's episodes of Library by Omobola Stephen, we continue in the season's episodes on family dynamics and parenting because we've come to realize the importance of us begin to talk on this important topic because we are in the changing environment and parenting can be very Herculean, especially in these dynamic times that we are in. Today, I move forward with the discussion on family dynamics and parenting, talking about how we can begin to trust our parenting instinct. I have Dr. Caroline Danda, a licensed psychologist. She focuses on solution-focused child psychologist. Welcome to the show, Dr. Caroline. I'm looking forward to an absolute great time as we explore this topic.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and really dive into these different topics. I think parents are struggling a lot today to figure it out. There's a lot of information out there about how to parent and how to parent the right way, and they're just trying to figure it all out. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into a little bit of the parenting world because I work a lot with parents. Since I work with kids, I'm working with parents, and it's really about bringing everybody together. And there is no perfect way to parent. Go ahead.
Right, good to know that. And now, I'd like us to begin with a parental instinct. Now, parental instincts can be heavily influenced by behaviors, environment, or almost hormonal responses rather than entirely innate. Now, the question is, do you think we should begin to consider the innate aspect of parenting, or really, how important is it to purposeful parenting?
Well, I mean, I think I'd really like for parents to lean in more to their own instincts. I think with the plethora of information that's out there about how to parent, and there's always trends about, oh, you should parent this way, you should parent that way, you should parent this way. And so the reality is I think we're born to parent. Like that's part of just the evolution of the human race is we need to procreate and help our species survive. And so there very much are some innate capabilities. And I think we need to trust our instincts. Parents know their kids best, right? It doesn't mean that we don't maybe sometimes get outside help and support so that we can match our parenting to our child, because our child does bring their own set of personality and behaviors and things like that to the family dynamic. And so I would have loved to have parented all three of my boys the same way. But that's not how life works. And so a lot of it is trying to navigate how do you find the parenting strategies that work for your family and for each of your kids. And it's a constant evolution of things. And I want to give parents permission to get it wrong. You don't know what you don't know until you know it, and that's all born out of experience. And so if you notice something and it feels off, then trust your instincts to say, okay, something might need to change, and that's okay. But don't beat yourself up for it.
All right, now in terms of finding the right parental strategies, right parenting strategies, just as you highlighted, which do you think we can begin to consider as the right approach to parenting? Should we begin to factor in knowledge from other parents, from the school system, or our own individual learned experiences and instincts alone?
I mean, I think you can get information that's out there, but I think there's a challenge of sometimes getting too much information. I do think it's helpful when you can share with other parents kind of what's going on, because then you might have a community, you might be able to get different perspectives. And so I think it is helpful to be educated and see what's out there, but then you have to make your own decisions based on that information. So even though, there may be a parenting thing that says, for example, like Okay, well, there needs to be a consequence if they don't do their homework. I mean, that seems like pretty solid advice, right? But I'll tell you that like sometimes it doesn't always work that simply. I have had kids in my office and even in my own house where we're like, well, you don't get to play video games unless you get your homework done at school. That seems like it would work right. Well, you know what? The kid got so upset about the possibility that he might lose the screens that then he actually got less work done. And so, even though there's a lot of parenting strategies and advice out there, you have to adapt it to kind of what works for your kid and your life. And I would say the bottom line, I think, in thinking about parenting, the framework would be having structure and guidance, but also kind of like warm fuzzies and relationship. You need relationship building and structure. And that comes back from Diana Baumridd's authoritative parenting. So there's lots of research behind that type of approach, and there's a lot of different specific strategies that can come into that authoritative approach where you're providing structure and guidance, but you're also giving warmth and nurturing that relationship. And I think that's what's really important. I think sometimes we're going too far into, like managing our kids' feelings and diving into our feelings without providing structure, or you can go the opposite direction where there's too much structure. So we're trying to find a balance between that structure and guidance, but also having time to really care about each other and nurture those family relationships. Um, so that's kind of where I would say, like, overall, it's nice to have that framework of thinking about parenting.
But really, doctor, we've had some parents who self-parent in terms of they don't have secondary sources, they get their information from. As you
Right.
just rightly said, community is also important. Do you think they are parenting the right way?
That if they're getting information from other sources.
That's right. They
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
get information from other sources.
yeah, I mean, I do think it's important that we connect to a point, and I do think that makes us feel less alone. And it says, like, wait, maybe I'm not the only one struggling with this. And so I do think it's important to, again, gather information, but I think to a point. I think sometimes when you are parenting out of fear or you have a lot of anxiety about whether you're doing it right, you can go to too many sources of information and then it just becomes a confusing mess. And so I think you have to do what my kids tell me now, check your sources, know what your sources are. So a 30-second reel is probably not your best source. So you really want to dive into the research and you want to be careful. That's why I say you have to trust your parenting instincts because you can go down the rabbit hole of, I'm not sure if this is right. What should I do? And if you're continuing to poll or search things online, then that's not really great for you as a parent and managing your own anxiety. So there's a limit.
Right, doctor. Childhood trauma really has forced some parents to parent with anxiety, right? They begin to lash out on these kids unconsciously because of having not dealt with our childhood trauma. So how
Right.
can parents begin to deal with it? I believe that is the root cause of all of the challenges we are facing in the family dynamics in this 21st century today.
Right. I think I think it is important to recognize as a parent what your own mental health is and how you're functioning because that also sets the tone in the household. So if you're struggling or if you're not feeling quite right or you're off or you're just exhausted, then that is going to trickle down to parents. And sometimes I feel like, if you've had a lot of trauma or you've had a difficult childhood or then you can overcorrect. A parent just wants what's best for their kids. And so sometimes what happens is we might overcorrect and pave the way too smoothly to provide that better life, which then that doesn't give kids the opportunity to develop their own resilience. And so I think it is important that you're tuned in. And if a parent doesn't have good emotion regulation, it's hard for kids to have good emotion regulation because they're going to learn from their parents. right? They're going to co-regulate, and they're going to mirror kind of what they see their parents doing. And they learn best from what they're seeing, not necessarily from what you're saying. So you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. If you're expecting your kids to have good emotion regulation, then you need to tune into yourself. And that might mean going and getting outside help yourself. And that's an important piece, is getting support for your own mental health so that you can be the parent that you want to be.
About a big question on the minds of the audience is really why does parenting make one so anxious?
Um, well, it makes us anxious because we care so much, right? So anxiety only bothers you about things that are really important to you. So, I mean, what can be more important than your kids, right? We want them to grow up. We want them to be happy. We want them to be healthy. We want them to just grow up to be a good human. And there is a lot of time that we're doing this. So some of it's also that because there's so much time, I think it does sometimes creates anxiety. And whenever there are challenges, we worry about how that will impact their development. And you can't cheat and look ahead and know that everything's going to be okay. So when your kid is struggling or something doesn't seem quite right, then it's easy to go to that place of anxiety and feel like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this, or what does this mean? And then you start catastrophizing about getting it, making sure that everything is going to be okay. And so I am a huge advocate for thinking about parenting as a long haul, right? I mean, really, think about it. We are parenting for a really, really long time. I mean, even when they turn
Absolutely.
18, is your parenting done? No, it's not necessarily done. And so even when your kid is struggling, like, it doesn't define who they are. It also doesn't define you as a parent. I think I see that too. So when your kid is struggling, it makes you as a parent feel like, okay, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? I must be doing something wrong if my kid is struggling. It's just really hard to see your kid in that space where they're struggling. But a lot of times we can only provide, what is it? You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. And sometimes we have to sit in the struggle or sit in the suck with them and allow them to kind of work through it at their own pace, which is really painful as a parent, whenever they're struggling. And I've been there, right? I've had a kid who's, has been in, sad and in bed and not wanting to get up. And, that was a really, really difficult time and did create a lot of anxiety, but it also, like, he was able to work through that. And so, and I've seen that in my practice too, where families come to me because their kids are really struggling. And, then we kind of address things and they can right that ship a little bit. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to spell disaster for them. In fact, a lot of times it's how they learn resilience and growth, and they have to find other coping skills.
All right. So in terms of supporting our kids, really, as parents, how can we actively support them as regards understanding their emotions? Because even research shows that kids whose parents struggle with anxiety, they are 2 to 7 times likely to develop anxiety disorder, even in the nearest future. So what's your
Right.
thought on this?
Well, back to kind of what you said earlier, too. Like, if you're feeling a lot of anxiety, then maybe you want to do some work on yourself, too, so that you can weather the storms that your kids might have. Your job as a parent is to kind of be their anchor so that whenever, they're kind of, getting tossed about in life, which again, you can't protect them. I like to sometimes open my talks with, your kids are going to struggle. Like, hard stop. That's, you can't prevent them from the struggle, and you don't get to choose what they struggle with or when they struggle. And so your job is to manage, to be an anchor. So if you're not feeling solid or grounded, then that's a more difficult thing to do. And a lot of it goes back to thinking about, how do we listen to them and validate? We want to connect with them. So I would say listening is your number one thing that you can do to promote that solid relationship, that your kids know that they can count on you. And a lot of times as a parent, if we have anxiety, right? We don't like something. What do you want to do? fix it, right? But a lot of times kids come to us, especially teenagers, they do not want you to fix it, right? A lot of times they just want you to vent. And so, or that not you to vent, they want to vent to the parent. And they don't want your solutions. They just want to know that you understand them. And so my biggest tips for parents is stepping back to just listen and paraphrase back what they say. Create that connection and get curious about what their experience is. And if you do that, then they might be even more open to suggestions if you have them later. Sometimes I'll say, you know what, is this a listening conversation or a fixing conversation? Or I'll say, you know what, that must be really hard. I'm here to listen if you want. I might have some ideas if you're ready for them, but if not, no big deal, but I'm here if you need me. So again, you're kind of creating, especially as they're getting older, you're creating a little bit of that autonomy of like, I really want to understand you. And I get that it's really hard, whatever they're going through, even though as an adult, a lot of times we're like, oh my God, that's such not a big deal. But if we think back to our own childhood, those things were also a big deal. We only can say they're not a big deal now because we have the wisdom of experience to know that those things don't dictate the rest of our life. But our kids don't have that experience yet. So meet them where they're at emotionally and get curious.
Absolutely. We have a whole lot of emotions stuck up inside of us as parents. And you also a parent, Dr. Caroline.
Yes.
So would you be willing to share some tough emotions the parents feel, but they don't talk about it?
So that would go back to just feeling helpless. No parent wants to admit that they kind of feel helpless, and that I think there sometimes can feel shame and embarrassment. I know I felt that in particular. I even from small things like one of my kids, I can vividly remember being in the grocery store, and he's an active kid. He likes to jazz things up. And the grocery store had this nice long aisle. So what did he do? He like went and slid on his knees down the aisle. And I'm feeling so embarrassed, and I'm so I'm feeling some shame too, like I can't control my child, and I'm a child psychologist, I should be able to do that. So even from that small thing to even like whenever I would get calls from the school that my child is struggling and that they're not getting the work done or they're being argumentative, I'm going to say I felt a lot of judgment, but I don't think that it was judgment from other people. I felt a lot of judgment on myself. And so those are some of like the things that brought out some really difficult feelings for me is really sometimes when I get thinking too much about what the perception of other people are, that's really hard. And then that also blocks sharing to other people. So if I'm feeling ashamed, I don't want to admit like my kid is struggling or here's just what happened. But a lot of times when we can open up about those things, it lifts the guilt, it lifts the shame because we're like, oh, actually, there's a lot of other people struggling with some of similar things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caroline, for sharing your thoughts in this. Indeed. I sincerely want to ask a genuine question.
Yeah.
So, how can we build genuine connections among families? I ask this genuinely because really, to be candid, we assume, most of us assume busy schedules, obligations
Yes.
on a daily
Yes.
basis, especially as parents. And so it's important for us, to foster, to build, a close-knit relationship, a family dynamic. But how is it going to be possible?
I think to your point, I think it's very easy to get caught up in the busyness of life. And so I think it's important that we pause and we think about and be intentional about how do we want our family to be? What's important to us? If that connection is important, which I think if you ask any parent, like you want that relationship, you want that connection, you have to think about are our actions matching that? So it could be anything with like, doing a family game night, right? So every Friday night, like I know some, like we would do like, well, probably pizza because I'm just tired by Friday and I can't figure out what I'm going to cook on Friday. So like we might do pizza and game night or pizza and a movie night. Or, the thing that I also would like to make sure that we do is, and I have to be careful about this because I feel like I'm the manager in the family. And so I'm like, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this. And so sometimes I get so caught up in everything, I forget to greet people. Like, hi, just like allowing time to greet each other. And also, one of the rules that I often recommend is having dinner time. If you can have dinner time together, even if it's not the whole family, even if it's like just segments of the family, then that's an important place to kind of be able to come together. But it's a no management zone. So we're not going to ask about how was your homework? How was, did you get this done? Oh, wait, do we have to go here? So I actually learned this from my husband because he noticed that I would go into these like management things and it would make the conversation die down. And so having like meal times be a time of family connection. And there's all kinds of things. I mean, you could do like would you rather questions if you're trying to figure out how do you generate conversation. You could also, sometimes I'll bring up with my older kids, I would bring up articles and we would kind of just talk about what those things are because I want to know more about, where they're coming from and what their ideas are. Sometimes we'll do a gratitude type thing where you might do what's your high, what's your low, how did you get through it? So we do I think dinner time and meal times can really be a time of connection. And just don't not forgetting to greet each other and smile and be happy that you see them. I think it sets the tone a lot for that. Um,
All right, Dr. Carolina, we'll be excited to have any other important information you'd like to share with the audience. Perhaps you've got a project you think it's going to add value to the audience. Come on, you can share them.
okay, a project that I think will add value. Um, well, I mean, so you're thinking about what's a project that would add value, and that sparks my mind to think about values. Like a project for a family to do sometimes is to pause and sit down and say, what does our family value? Right? What is really important? And then kind of see like, okay, well, if our family value is connection, what actions align with that? And if it's not fully aligned, then what do we do to increase that? That alignment. What kinds of things do we want to put into our life? I mean, it's easy because sometimes we'll be like, we teach our kids all the time to say please and thank you and manners and things like that. And so, just in that same vein, like being polite and considerate seems to be a general family value. Like, what are those other family values? So, thinking about like if kindness and generosity is something that you want to grow in your child, then that's something you want to think about as a family. How are we demonstrating this? And so, really thinking about kind of bringing people together to do some activities. So, that might involve some volunteering. It's one of the things I wish I had paused to reflect on and maybe done a little bit more of with my family when they were a little bit younger. So, I think really stopping to pause and really think about what our values are, what's working. I always also like to think about, okay, well, what actually is working? Because typically there's more working than not. But like when things aren't going well, we tend to, our brains naturally notice the negative parts. And honestly, typically there's a lot more going well than not going well. And so if we can remember that, it balances out some of the negative things. So when we're kind of having an attitude of gratitude and kind of paying attention to those things, it helps us weather the hard things a lot more. So I think it really is about kind of pausing to just see like where are we at as a family, as opposed to just like go, 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 go. So I think that would be the exercise that I would say is just pause and see where you want to go.
All right, we love to connect, Doctor. Can you share social media handles on your website? We're super excited to learn more about you and your project.
Yeah, my website is easy. It's carolinedanda.com. And so you can find all of the information all about me right there. So for therapy and speaking and other things, I've just relaunched it. So my resources aren't there yet, but I do like to add some other resources that's in the works that I'll be adding some additional resources for families. I really just want families to really feel supported um, and know that they're doing a better job than they think they are. I want
Good
to
to
help
know.
relieve some of that anxiety and help find that calm in the chaos so that they can build that resilience instead of feeling chaotic all the time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caroline. It was really great having you on the show. We're talking about trusting our parental instinct. Really a great time having you share your thoughts with
Thank
the
you.
audience of Omobola Stephen as we're focusing on parenting and family dynamics in the 21st century. Dr. Caroline Danda is a licensed psychologist, a solution-focused child psychologist. It was a great pleasure indeed having you share your thoughts with the audience. We wish you best of luck in all of the projects that you embark upon, Dr. Caroline.
Thank you. And I so appreciate the work that you do on this podcast and just promoting that well-lived life. So my best of luck for your continued success in that and just helping families kind of make those shifts that help them find what makes them feel well.
Right. Humbled by your words, Dr. Caroline. Thank you for sharing this thought with the audience. Appreciate once again. It's been Omobola Stephen. I'm Omobola Stephen. We had a great time exploring on trusting our parenting instinct in this season's episodes of Family Dynamics and Parenting in the 21st Century. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, you can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms. You bump into online and do have a great time listening to transformative insight from professionals who are adept in the topics of personal development and self-improvement. And don't forget, we are exploring the topic of parenting and family dynamic in the 21st century. And so I guarantee you're going to have a great time listening to these experts share their profound insight indeed with you on your way. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Caroline. That was a great show.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.